I'm Marlena, 29 female. I live in a quiet apartment filled with books and meticulously organized records, a peaceful sanctuary from the noise of the world. By day, I'm an archivist at the city library, a job I love because it's about preserving stories, not twisting them. My life was built on a foundation of quiet consistency, but I never realized that foundation was more fragile than I thought. This is the story of how my sister, the family's golden child, tried to shatter my world for a moment of entertainment, not knowing that in our modern age, the quietest people often have the clearest recordings. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The annual Miller family reunion was an institution, a day of forced smiles, potato salad, and the subtle, simmering tensions that only decades of shared history can produce. For me, it was always a tightrope walk. My role in the family was that of the quiet observer, the reliable one, the one who faded into the floral-patterned wallpaper while my younger sister, Serafina, soaked up the spotlight. She was the sun around which our family orbited, and I was a distant, barely there moon. This year, the reunion was held at my parents' house. Their backyard was a familiar landscape of manicured lawns and blooming azaleas, a perfect stage for the perfect family my mother, Brenda, was so keen on projecting. My father, David, was already manning the grill, his booming laugh echoing as he flipped burgers, a sound that used to feel like home but now felt more like a performance. Serafina arrived, as always, fashionably late. She didn't just walk into the backyard, she made an entrance. Dressed in a bright sundress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, with sunglasses perched on her perfectly styled hair, she commanded attention without even trying. "I'm here," she announced, and a chorus of happy greetings erupted from our aunts, uncles, and cousins. My mother rushed to her side, fussing over her as if she'd just returned from a perilous journey, instead of a 30-minute drive from her trendy downtown condo. "Oh, Serafina, darling, you look exhausted. Is work treating you well?" Mom asked, her voice laced with concern. "It's been wild, Mom," Serafina said, sighing dramatically. "Just closed a huge deal on a downtown property. The commission is going to be insane." She flashed a brilliant smile, the kind she used on clients and, well, everyone. My dad left the grill to give her a hug, patting her on the back. That's my girl, always hustling. I was standing by the drink table, pouring myself a glass of iced tea, and received a simple nod from my father. "Marlena, good to see you." That was it. No questions about my work, no fawning praise. It wasn't malicious, it was just how things were. Serafina was the story, I was the footnote. The only person who made a beeline for me was my cousin Liam. He was my rock in this sea of performative family bonding. "Hey, Mar," he said, grabbing a soda. "Ready for another year of the Serafina show?" I managed a small smile. I have my survival kit, a full glass of iced tea and a low social battery that will give me an excuse to leave early. Liam chuckled. He was an IT specialist, a logical and grounded person who saw through the family dynamics with the same clarity he used to diagnose a corrupted hard drive. "Just try to ignore her. You know how she gets when she's the center of attention. She's like a plant that needs sunlight, except the sunlight is everyone's undivided adoration." I knew he was right. For years, I had perfected the art of ignoring her subtle digs and backhanded compliments. When I got my master's degree in library science, Serafina had commented, "Oh, how sweet. You get to play with dusty old books all day. I'd be so bored." When I bought my modest apartment, she'd said, "It's cute. Very cozy. Are you sure you'll have enough room for all your cats?" For the record, I have one cat. The fragile peace of the afternoon held for a few hours. We ate, we made small talk, and I successfully avoided getting cornered by my great Aunt Carol, who always wanted to know why a lovely girl like me was still single. I found a quiet bench under the old oak tree at the edge of the yard, nursing my drink and watching the chaos from a safe distance. It was my happy place. But peace in our family was never meant to last. It was just the silence between Serafina's crescendos. I saw her gathering a crowd near the patio. My parents, my aunts, my uncles, all of them were drawn into her orbit. She was telling a story, her hands gesturing wildly, her voice rising with theatrical flair. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I recognized the signs. This was her stage, and the grand finale was approaching. Liam caught my eye from across the lawn and gave me a look, a mixture of warning and sympathy. He knew it too. The calm was over. The storm was about to break, and for some reason, I had a sinking feeling that this time, I was the one it was heading for. I just didn't know how devastating it would be. The sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the lawn. The air grew cooler, but the tension was ratcheting up. I could feel it in the way people's conversations quieted whenever Serafina raised her voice. She had successfully gathered the most influential family members, our parents, our grandparents, and the aunts who were the biggest gossips, into a semicircle on the deck. She was holding a glass of champagne, a prop she used to emphasize her points. "And you all know how much I value honesty and transparency," she was saying, her voice carrying across the yard. "It's the cornerstone of my business, and it's the cornerstone of family, right?" A murmur of agreement went through the small crowd. My mother beamed at her, her eyes shining with pride. "You've always been such a good, honest girl, sweetie." My stomach churned. Serafina using the word honesty was like a wolf lecturing sheep on the benefits of vegetarianism. I stayed on my bench under the oak tree, hoping that if I remained still enough, I would become invisible. Liam started to walk towards me, his expression uneasy, but before he could reach me, Serafina's voice sliced through the air again, this time with a name. My name. "That's why I think it's time we were all completely honest about our family's story. All of it," she announced, her eyes scanning the crowd before locking onto me. "Marlena, why don't you come over here?" Every head turned in my direction. The chatter stopped. The clinking of glasses ceased. There was only the sound of the crickets starting their evening song and the frantic hammering of my own heart. I was frozen. 30 pairs of eyes were on me, waiting. This was my worst nightmare, being the focus of everyone's attention. Reluctantly, I stood up and walked towards the deck, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. The fragile piece had not just been broken, it had been atomized. "What is it, Serafina?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She gave me a saccharine smile, the one that never reached her eyes. "Oh, nothing bad. I just feel like we have this unspoken thing in our family, a secret we all know but never talk about, and I think it's unhealthy to keep secrets." She took a dramatic sip of her champagne. "I'm talking about how you came into this family, Marlena." Ice flooded my veins. No, she wouldn't. This was a line even she would cross. My adoption was the most personal, sensitive part of my identity. It was something my parents had told me about when I was very young, and we had only ever discussed it as a small, immediate family. The extended family knew, of course, it's impossible to keep a secret like that in a family like mine, but it was an unspoken truth, a piece of information handled with care and privacy. It was mine. "Serafina, don't," I pleaded in a low voice, trying to communicate with my eyes the sheer panic I was feeling. But she either didn't see it or didn't care. She turned back to her captive audience. "You see, what some of the younger generation might not know is that Marlena is adopted. My parents couldn't have children for years, and then this little miracle came along." She reached out and patted my arm condescendingly. "And we are so glad they found you. It's such a beautiful story, isn't it? A story of charity and love." The word charity hung in the air, ugly and sharp. She had framed it not as the creation of a family, but as an act of pity. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the looks on people's faces, pity from some, morbid curiosity from others, and discomfort from most. My mother looked flustered, her smile faltering. "Well, yes, dear, but perhaps this isn't the time." My father just stood there, looking at his shoes, a silent accomplice as always. Serafina wasn't finished. "I just think it's so inspiring, and I wanted to share it because Marlena is always so quiet, and I want everyone to know how special her journey has been. We should celebrate it." She raised her glass. "A toast to Marlena, our little foundling who found her forever home." No one raised their glass. The word foundling was a punch to the gut. It was an archaic, cruel term designed to make me feel like an abandoned object they had picked up off the street. Tears pricked my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I looked at her, at the triumphant smirk playing on her lips, and I finally understood. This wasn't about honesty or celebration. This was about power. She was reminding everyone, and me, of my place. I was the outsider, the addition, the other. She was the real thing. I turned and walked away, ignoring my mother. Weak call of my name. I pushed through the stunned crowd, my face burning with humiliation. I grabbed my purse from the house and walked straight to my car, not looking back. As I drove away, the tears finally came, hot and furious. She hadn't just told a secret. She had taken my story, the most intimate part of who I am, and twisted it into a weapon to hurt me, all for a moment of drama at a family party. She did it for sport. The 2 days following the reunion were a blur of shame and anger. I called in sick to work, unable to face even the quiet, non-judgmental company of historical documents. My apartment, usually my sanctuary, felt like a cage. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls and texts from my mother, all of which I ignored. They were predictable messages filled with platitudes. "Serafina didn't mean it like that. You're being too sensitive. Don't let this ruin the family." They weren't apologies. They were demands for me to swallow my pain and restore the family's precious equilibrium. The humiliation was a physical weight. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the faces of my relatives, a mixture of pity and discomfort. I heard Serafina's voice, dripping with false sincerity, calling me a foundling. She had taken my personal history and turned it into a piece of cheap gossip to entertain her audience. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. She hadn't just revealed a secret. She had rewritten my identity in front of everyone, casting me as a pathetic object of charity. On the third day, a text came through that was different. It was from Liam. "Hey, Ma, are you okay? I'm really sorry about what happened. What Serafina did was unforgivable." It was the first message that actually acknowledged my feelings. I felt a small crack in the wall of ice I had built around myself. "I'm not okay," I typed back, "but thank you for asking." A minute later, he replied, "Can I come over? There's something I think you need to see. It's important." I hesitated. I didn't want to see anyone, but Liam was different. He had always been my ally. I agreed, and about an hour later, he was at my door, a laptop bag slung over his shoulder and a grim expression on his face. We sat at my small kitchen table. He didn't bother with small talk. "I knew she was going to pull something," he began, opening his laptop. "She was looking for a way to stir up drama all day. She gets bored when things are too peaceful." "She called me a foundling, Liam," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "In front of everyone, and my parents just stood there." "I know, it was disgusting," he said, his voice firm. "But it was worse than you think. It wasn't just a spontaneous act of cruelty, it was premeditated." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He turned the laptop towards me and clicked on a video file. I was on the side of the house, on the phone with my boss, just before Serafina made her big speech. The call ended, but I hadn't put my phone away yet. I saw her talking to her friend Jessica by the rose bushes. They thought they were alone. I had a weird feeling, so I started recording. He pressed play. The video was a bit shaky, filmed from a distance, but the audio was crystal clear. It showed Serafina and Jessica, both holding glasses of champagne, laughing conspiratorially. Jessica's voice came first. "Are you really going to do it? It seems kind of harsh." And then I heard my sister's voice, laced with a smug, chilling amusement. "Oh, please, it's not harsh. It's overdue. This family is so boring. Every reunion is the same old thing. It needs a little spice, a little drama to liven things up. Besides, Marlena is always so holier-than-thou with her quiet little life and her dusty books. It's time someone reminded her that she's only in this family because my parents felt sorry for her." Jessica giggled. "You're terrible." "I'm iconic," Serafina corrected her, taking a sip of champagne. "Watch this. I'm going to frame it like I'm celebrating her brave journey or something. Mom and Dad will eat it up. they'll feel so proud of their magnanimous, big-hearted daughter for being so inclusive. And Marlena, she'll just freeze, she never fights back. It's going to be perfect. The video ended. I stared at the blank screen, my mind struggling to process what I had just heard. The casual, calculated cruelty in her voice was more shocking than the public humiliation itself. This wasn't a misguided attempt at honesty. It wasn't a social blunder fueled by too much champagne. It was a planned, malicious attack on my identity, designed for her own entertainment. Spice things up. She had detonated a bomb in the middle of my life just because she was bored. The hurt I had been feeling curdled into something else. It was a cold, hard, and heavy rage. The tears were gone, replaced by an icy clarity. She had banked on me being the quiet one who never fights back. She had used my personality, my reserved nature, as a calm. Opponent of her plan, she had counted on my silence. "She's right about one thing," I said, my voice low and steady. "I always freeze, I never fight back." I looked up at Liam, and for the first time in my life, I felt the stirrings of a warrior. That's about to change. Liam watched me, a flicker of concern in his eyes that was quickly replaced by a slow, supportive nod. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the video file on his laptop, the undeniable proof of her malice. As an archivist, I dealt with records, with primary sources, with the irrefutable truth of the past. And Liam had just handed me the most important document of my life. "I'm going to do what I do best," I said. "I'm going to preserve this record, and then I'm going to present it." The video was a catalyst. It transformed my grief into a focused, methodical anger. My training as an archivist took over. I was no longer a victim drowning in emotion. I was a researcher assembling a case. My objective was to understand the full scope of Serafina's deception, not just in this single act, but throughout our lives. I needed to see the pattern, to connect the dots of her casual cruelty that I had dismissed or ignored for years. First, I had Liam send me a secure, encrypted copy of the video file. I saved it in multiple locations, a password-protected external drive, a secure cloud server, and my personal laptop. I transcribed the conversation verbatim, creating a text document that I timestamped and saved alongside the video. Evidence preservation was my first priority. Then the investigation began. I started with my own memories. For years, Serafina had operated with a kind of plausible deniability. Her insults were always couched in concern, her put-downs disguised as compliments. I went through old journals, emails, and text messages looking for these instances. There was the email from 5 years ago, after I'd been passed over for a promotion. Serafina had written, "Don't worry, sis. Not everyone is cut out for leadership. Your strengths are in supporting roles, and that's a wonderful thing." At the time, I'd read it as a clumsy attempt at comfort. Now I saw it for what it was, a deliberate effort to undermine my confidence. There was the time she, accidentally, told my then-boyfriend about a personal health issue I'd confided in her about. She had claimed it just slipped out, and I had believed her. He had broken up with me a week later, saying he wasn't ready for that level of drama. I now suspected that slip was a carefully calculated push. Each memory I unearthed was a small piece of a much larger, uglier puzzle. She had been systematically reinforcing a narrative my entire life, that I was fragile, less capable, and fundamentally different. Her revelation at the reunion wasn't an isolated event. It was the culmination of a long-term campaign to define me on her terms. My next step was to look for allies, or at least corroborating witnesses. I started with Liam. I asked him if he had ever noticed other instances of Serafina's manipulation. "Are you kidding?" he said over the phone. "She's been doing this for years. Remember Grandma Helen's 80th birthday? Serafina was in charge of the slideshow. She put in a bunch of great photos of herself with Grandma, and for you, she chose that one awful picture from when you were 12 with braces and a bad perm. When you looked upset, she said, 'Oh, I thought it was cute and funny, you're so sensitive.' She made you look ridiculous and then blamed you for feeling bad about it." Classic Serafina. I remembered that day perfectly. I had spent the rest of the party hiding in the bathroom, feeling ugly and embarrassed. Another dot connected. My investigation then led me to a more uncomfortable place. My parents. I needed to understand why they enabled her. I finally answered my mother's call, keeping my voice calm and neutral. "Marlena, honey, I'm so glad you called," she said, her voice filled with a relieved sort of anxiety. "Your father and I were so worried. We need to put this behind us." "I want to understand something, Mom," I said, cutting through her prepared speech. "Why did you and Dad let Serafina do that? Why didn't you stop her?" She sighed, and the defensiveness crept into her tone. She gets carried away. She has such a big personality. She didn't mean to hurt you. She loves you." "She called me a foundling, Mom. She planned it beforehand to create drama." I let that hang in the air for a moment before continuing. "For years, you've both let her get away with these little cruelties. You praise everything she does, and you tell me I'm being too sensitive whenever I get hurt. Why?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When my mother finally spoke, her voice was small and strained. "When we couldn't have children, it was a very dark time for us, for me especially. I felt like a failure. When we adopted you, it was a miracle, boo. I was always afraid. Afraid I wouldn't love you enough, afraid people would judge us. Then, when Serafina was born, it was different. She was proof that my body wasn't broken. She was our biological child. It was a validation I didn't know I needed." Her confession was a painful, selfish truth, but it was the truth. In their eyes, Serafina was a symbol of their victory over infertility. I was a reminder of their struggle. They loved me, I believe, but they adored her. They didn't see her as a bully. They saw her as a bright, shining success, and my pain was an inconvenient smudge on that perfect picture. This was the final, crucial piece of my investigation. It wasn't just Serafina I was up against. It was the entire family system, carefully constructed over decades, that enabled her behavior and minimized my existence. My plan for revenge couldn't just be about exposing Serafina. It had to be about dismantling the entire narrative she and my parents had built. The video was my weapon, but the target was bigger than just one person. It was the whole fragile, dishonest piece they had mistaken for a happy family. With the evidence gathered and the motives understood, it was time to formulate a plan. My initial instinct was to do something loud and dramatic, to email the video to the entire family, to post it on social media, to match Serafina's fire with an inferno of my own. But that wasn't me. My strength wasn't in explosive confrontations. It was in quiet, meticulous organization. My revenge would reflect that. It would be an archive of her own making, presented calmly and without commentary, allowing her own words to be her undoing. The perfect opportunity was just around the corner. My parents' 35th wedding anniversary. They were planning a small, intimate dinner party at their house for immediate family and a few of their closest friends, the very people who had been the primary audience for my humiliation. It was the ideal setting. Serafina would be there, expecting to be celebrated as part of the happy couple's legacy. She would feel safe, comfortable, and completely unprepared. My first step was to secure my role in the event. I called my mother, adopting a tone of weary resignation. "Mom," I said, "I've had some time to think. I overreacted at the reunion. I know Serafina meant well. I don't want this to overshadow your anniversary. I'd like to do something special for you and Dad at the party." The relief in her voice was palpable. "Oh, Marlena, that's wonderful. I knew you'd come around. What did you have in mind?" "I was thinking of putting together a slideshow," I said. "A digital photo album of your life together. I can scan old photos, add some music. It'll be my gift to you." This was a masterstroke, and I knew it. It played directly into their narrative of me as the quiet, thoughtful, and accommodating daughter. It also mirrored the very tool Serafina had used to humiliate me at Grandma Helen's birthday. The irony was delicious. "What a beautiful idea," my mother gushed. "Serafina was going to do that, but she's just been so busy with work. This is perfect. I'll tell her. She'll be so pleased you're making an effort." Of course she would be. She would see it as a sign of my surrender. For the next 2 weeks, I became a director preparing for a premiere. I spent hours at the library's digitization lab, scanning hundreds of family photos. I crafted a beautiful, genuinely touching slideshow that chronicled my parents' journey from their wedding day to the present. There were photos of them as a young couple, photos of their first home, photos of family vacations. I included photos of myself as a baby, then photos of Serafina. I made sure to portray a happy, loving family. The first 10 minutes of the presentation would be a perfect monument to the illusion they had all so carefully maintained. It was the bait. Meanwhile, I worked with Liam to prepare the technical aspects. He helped me edit the video he had taken, cleaning up the audio and adding simple, clear subtitles to their conversation. We embedded his video into the slideshow. It would play directly after a heartwarming photo of my parents with a newborn Serafina, a picture captioned, "Our family is complete." The transition from that idyllic image to the raw, ugly truth of Serafina's voice would be jarring and undeniable. The final piece of the plan was setting up the physical stage. My parents' living room had a large smart TV mounted above the fireplace, which was perfect. I told my mother I needed to come over the day before the party to test the slideshow and make sure the file was compatible with their TV. She readily agreed. When I arrived, I didn't just test the file. With Liam's guidance over the phone, I accessed the TV's back-end settings. We disabled all manual controls from the remote and the TV itself. The slideshow would be loaded from a specific USB drive, and once I hit play from my phone using Gia casting app, it could not be stopped, paused, or turned off until it had finished. The only way to stop the show would be to unplug the TV completely, a clumsy, dramatic act that would only underscore their panic and guilt. As I left my parents' house that afternoon, with the digital trap set and the bait laid, I felt a strange sense of calm. I wasn't nervous. I was an archivist about to present a crucial historical record to a very select audience. I had organized the facts. I had preserved the evidence. All that was left was to let the truth speak for itself. Serafina wanted to spice things up with a bit of drama. I was about to serve her a dish so spicy it would burn her entire world to the ground. The night of the anniversary party was cloaked in a sense of surreal calm. I arrived dressed in a simple, elegant navy blue dress, the color of quiet confidence. I looked professional, composed, and utterly unremarkable. As I walked in, Serafina gave me a triumphant, pitying smile. "Marlena, I'm so glad you decided to stop being so dramatic," she whispered as she hugged me, her voice a sickly sweet concoction of condescension. "Mom told me you're doing the slideshow. That's so sweet of you. A perfect job for you." "I'm happy to do it," I replied, my voice even. I didn't betray a hint of the storm raging inside me. I was a blank slate, a perfect archivist presenting her findings without emotion. Dinner was a tense affair, at least for me. My parents and their friends laughed and reminisced, while Serafina held court, telling exaggerated stories about her latest real estate conquests. I ate quietly, observed, and waited. My contribution to the evening was the main event, scheduled to happen after dessert. When the time came, my father dimmed the lights. "And now, Marlena has a special surprise for us," he announced, beaming. "A trip down memory lane for my beautiful wife and me." All eyes turned to the large screen above the fireplace. I stood near the back of the room, my phone in my hand. I took a deep breath and pressed play. The slideshow began just as I had designed it. Sentimental music swelled as photos of my parents' wedding filled the screen. There were audible ahs from the guests. The presentation moved through their early years, the birth of their children, first me, then Serafina, and countless holidays and birthdays. It was a flawless portrait of a happy family. I could see my mother dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. My father had his arm around her. Serafina was watching with a smug look, as if she were taking credit for this perfect family history. The slideshow reached the 10-minute mark. A photo of my smiling parents holding a newborn Serafina appeared with the caption, "Our family is complete." The music swelled to a poignant crescendo and then faded into silence. The screen went black for a single, pregnant second. And then it started. The shaky cell phone footage of Serafina and her friend Jessica by the rose bushes filled the screen. The audio, crisp and clear, filled the silent room. "Are you really going to do it? It seems kind of harsh," Jessica's voice said. Serafina's face on the screen twisted into a smug grin. "Oh, please, it's not harsh, it's overdue. This family is so boring, it needs a little spice." A confused murmur rippled through the room. My parents turned to look at me, their faces etched with confusion. Serafina's smile vanished, replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. She knew this video. She knew what was coming next. Her voice continued, damning her with every word. It's time someone reminded her that she's only in this family because my parents felt sorry for her. The guests gasped. My Aunt Clara, my mother's sister, shot a horrified look at Serafina. "You're terrible," Jessica's voice giggled. "I'm iconic," Serafina's on-screen self declared. "Watch this. I'm going to frame it like I'm celebrating her brave journey. Mom and Dad will eat it up, and Marlena, she'll just freeze. She never fights back. It's going to be perfect." The video ended, and the screen went black again. The silence in the room was absolute, a vacuum where all the pleasantries and false affections had been sucked away. It was broken by my father, who shot up from his chair. "What is this? Turn it off, Marlena. Turn it off now." He fumbled for the remote, pressing the power button frantically. Nothing happened. My mother was staring at Serafina, her face pale, her mouth agape in disbelief. Serafina was panicking. "That's fake, it's edited. Marlena is trying to ruin your anniversary. She's always been jealous of me." But her denial was weak, her voice shrill with guilt. No one was looking at me. All eyes were on her. They had all been there at the reunion. They had heard her call me a foundling. They had witnessed her performance. And now they had seen the script. My father, realizing the remote was useless, scrambled towards the TV, Yankee. NG at the power cord behind it. With a loud pop, the screen went dead. He stood there, breathing heavily, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. I finally spoke, my voice cutting through the tension, clear and steady. "She was right. I don't fight back." I looked directly at Serafina, whose face was a mess of tears and fury. "But I do keep records." I didn't need to say another word. I placed my phone on a side table, picked up my purse, and walked towards the door. The foundation of their perfect family had been fractured, not by my anger, but by the weight of their own hidden truths. The show was over. The unveiling was complete. Leaving my parents' house that night felt like walking out of a theater after a long, exhausting play. The immediate aftermath was a deafening silence. I didn't hear from anyone for 3 days. No angry calls, no tearful texts. It was as if the shockwave from my detonation had temporarily severed all lines of communication. In that silence, I found an odd sense of peace. I had presented the truth. What they chose to do with it was no longer my burden to carry. The first to reach out, predictably, was Liam. He sent a simple text, "Are you a legend or are you a legend?" It made me smile for the first time in weeks. I called him, and he filled me in on what he had heard through the family grapevine. Apparently, the party had ended moments after I left. My parents' friends made awkward excuses and fled. My father had yelled, my mother had cried, and Serafina had locked herself in a bathroom, refusing to come out. The perfect anniversary celebration had imploded. The family was fractured. My aunts and uncles were divided. Some, like my Aunt Clara, were appalled by Serafina's actions and had called my mother to say so. Others took the side of my parents, arguing that it was a private family matter that I had cruelly aired in public. They saw the method of my revenge, not the reason for it. In a way, they proved my point. The image of the family was more important to them than the well-being of its members. A week later, I received a long, rambling email from my mother. It was a tangled mess of apologies, accusations, and justifications. She was sorry for my hurt, but angry that I had embarrassed them. She acknowledged Serafina's cruelty, but claimed my response was just as bad. The email ended with a plea for me to be the bigger person and apologize to Serafina so we could start to heal as a family. I read the email twice, then moved it to a new folder I labeled Archive. I did not reply. An apology was not what they wanted. They wanted compliance. They wanted me to go back to being the quiet footnote in Serafina's story. But that person was gone. My father never contacted me directly. According to Liam, he was too proud and too embarrassed. He had built his life on the image of success and control, and I had shown everyone that his own house was in chaos. His silence was its own answer. Serafina's life took a significant hit. Her reputation within the family was in tatters, but the real consequence came from an unexpected source. Her friend Jessica, who had been in the video with her, was the niece of one of my parents' closest friends, a man who happened to be a prominent local business owner. Horrified that his niece was involved and disgusted by Serafina's behavior, he made a few phone calls. Serafina worked in real estate, a business built on reputation and trust. Within a month, her network of referrals had dried up. She lost 2 major clients who had connections to that business owner. Her career, which she had so often flaunted, began to stall. She had tried to burn down my world for entertainment, and in the process, she had set her own on fire. I spent the next few months building a new definition of family. Liam became more like a brother to me than a cousin. We started having dinner once a week. My Aunt Clara, who had been horrified by the whole affair, reached out and we began to build a genuine relationship, separate from the larger, toxic family dynamic. I found support and love in unexpected corners. I have not seen my parents or Serafina since that night. The path to true reconciliation would require them to dismantle the system they built, to see me as an equal daughter and not as a supporting character. It would require an apology not for being embarrassed, but for the decades of quiet pain they caused and condoned. I don't know if they are capable of that. My life is quieter now, but it is a genuine quiet, not a fearful one. I am no longer a fragile piece waiting to be broken. I am the archivist of my own story. I know its value, and I will never again allow someone else to rewrite it. Some might say that what I did was vengeful, but I disagree. It was an act of preservation, the preservation of my own truth.